Hi, this is Nathan. Welcome to the Wad Fam Chalk Pod.
Howdy, Andrew Sabo here. We're just getting ready for a time of humor, analysis, and excitement. Would you like to join us? Then get ready, because you never know what could happen when you listen to the Wad Fam Chalk Pod.
That was...
I can't remember.
No, it was the first episode. No, it couldn't have been. So it couldn't have been Rick. Hello and welcome to the Wad Fam Chalk Pod. I'm Dylan Weaver.
And I'm Andrew Sabo.
And we are here to talk about episode 285, George Under Pressure.
That we are.
The second episode with George in its title that we have covered in 2021.
Yeah, and the second title that is just describing what's happening.
Yeah.
Directly.
Mm-hmm.
No ifs, ands, or buts about it.
Yeah.
What's the word? No miss. Never mind.
None of those things. This is an episode written and directed by Mr. Paul McCusker, as all of the ones thus far have been. We'll see if that continues to be the case. I genuinely don't know. It was first aired October 8th of 1994, which was like... 5 months after the previous episode?
Wow.
So this is the biggest gap. All the other ones were like a couple weeks apart. We took a 5-month gap, which was basically like them... Because so first one we talked about had Hal Smith as Wit.
Yep.
Next two had Hal Smith parts rewritten for other characters because they were like trying to figure out what to do.
Yeah.
Then they took a bunch of months and like came up with all that plan, laid all that groundwork, made all that stuff happen. And now we're back. So like the Bernard and Eugene road trip happens.
Yep.
All of
that whole album.
All of these things. Right. Basically an album's worth of material trying to figure out what to do now.
Yep.
And then we jump back in with this story after kind of that settled. This is on album 22, The Changing Times, which is the album where both Jack and Jason are introduced.
Yeah. This is also the Tom for Mayor album.
It's Tom for Mayor. It's Name Not a Number.
Wow, what a banger.
Yeah.
This album.
Mm-hmm. Well, because it's the, like, Wit's gone. We're replacing him with Jake and... With Jake. That's Jack and Jason's ship name.
Yeah. Ooh. Wouldn't that just their names both start with...
Yeah, but it's the sound of J and the end of Jack. So it's Jake.
Okay. Yeah. Phonetically that works out.
I mean, Jackson would maybe be the other option. But
that's just a normal name.
So is Jake.
No, it's not. Jakes aren't real. Do you know a single Jake?
If you're a Jake, tweet at Andrew.
Yeah, let me know you're real.
So yeah, it's just we're kind of hitting a particular era of Odyssey, and
I have nothing but good things to say about this era. And if you have any doubts about that, listen to our coverage of Tom for Mayor
and listen to this episode. Which is possibly my worst nightmare.
Oh, like being in George's position?
I am George.
Yeah, that's
this
really
episode
hard.
is me.
Yeah.
And it is stressful.
No, it's so stressful for me. This episode is like one of the reasons that I low-key didn't want to cover the George Barkley saga. This one, and like there's moments in the Pokenberry Falls arc where like George is really upset and just really in a not great place where I'm like, Boy, Odyssey, you're really coming for it.
Yeah, but like I think there will be good stuff to talk about when we get there.
Well, I haven't listened to it since I was a child, and it was probably upsetting to me because the characters were upset.
Right, but you're like the same guy. Like, there's another like episode? What's the one that you like famously wouldn't listen to that then we covered on here and you loved? Was it a Brandon episode or something? Well, I forget. I don't know.
Was it Twilight Zone?
Maybe. I don't know. All right, I'm probably cutting all that. But if there's people listening who are like, oh yeah, that episode that Andrew hated,
tweet at us, please.
Yeah.
Help us out.
Our memory's not as good as yours.
Yeah, seriously.
Other context things. I mean, like, it's got the Barkley family. It also has Jack Allen. That's it.
If you want to hear character notes about Jack, listen to one of our episodes that covers Jack.
Yeah, there's really not much.
Something worth noting, I would say, about the cast. Donna sounds so much older in this episode, I feel like, than...
Really?
I thought, like, her voice sounds, like, way deeper. But maybe that was just me and listening to it on my phone or whatever, but...
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't think about it. I was thinking, actually, about the fact that, like, there are moments in this episode where her and Jimmy seem closer in age.
Yeah.
More than I was thinking about, like, her voice. Because we talked a lot about how, like, mature Donna is and how great that is. And this episode puts them on a little bit of similar playing field. Not in a way that I think is bad or untrue. But just in a way that kind of jumped out to me as like, oh, yeah, okay. Like, we're in the deep waters here, and she is also a child.
Yeah.
Good to remember.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. I am gonna go ahead and roll the promo then.
Roll the promo.
Because, yeah, I don't have anything else to say off the top here. So, promo time.
Don't blow your top on the next adventure in Odyssey. George Barclay is on the verge of exhaustion between his work with the church and time-consuming studies at seminary. And then Donna and Jimmy decide to step in and help, but only make matters worse. Should George give up on his calling to the ministry? Find out next time on Adventures in Odyssey.
So when we talked about promos that go for it and that we love, that's what I'm talking about.
More
folks.
of that.
Can we get more promos that start with gunshots?
That was hilarious.
An explosion, some jangly guitar, no clips from the show.
No.
Just a general set dressing and too much instrumental on the end.
It was like an explosion, and then it sounded like the Moo Moo Meadows Mario Kart track, and then it sounded like that Mario Kart track ended up in a saloon, and then we got like the, old guy playing on the harpsichord in the corner thing, and then it went back to the Mario Kart to finish the race.
Really phenomenal.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Hats off.
I want to...
Headphones off.
I'm putting this request out there into the ether because I don't know, we have some level of influence. If the man who does these promos is still alive,
yeah,
I want to talk to him.
I want to thank him personally.
I have to know
what was this like.
Yeah, I don't know. I want to know what it was like doing that job. What other jobs he had. Like,
what were the parameters he was given each week?
It would be cool to interview a writer or an actor on the show, but the guy I really want to get inside the head of
is the promo man. Sir Promo. Oh my lord. That was we couldn't have asked for anything better, guys.
No, I'm so stoked.
Especially because this episode is so sad.
That's very fair.
So this episode kicks off with a wit intro?
No, it's a Tom intro.
Oh, it's a Tom intro.
So the only thing I can think, we don't have George intros. That never happened.
Yeah.
And my guess is that they didn't have a Jack intro in the bank at this point.
Yeah.
So they were like, well, Wit's dead. Tom's gonna be mentioned. Let's just make it a Tom intro. Because we've weirdly gotten Wit intros every episode up till this point, despite him only being in the first one. But it's like, whatever. He's the default.
Yeah.
And then at this point, I imagine they just stopped doing Wit intros on this album.
Yeah.
But they didn't have any other characters in here, and Jack will go on to get intros, I think.
Yeah, I think we've covered
I assume?
Jack intros.
But anyways, at this point, they were just like, I guess we'd go with a, I guess we go with a Tom intro. Tom's
very
name
okay with it.
is Tom is notably missing from this episode.
Yeah, no, he's
like
not
it
around
is
at all.
a very clear like
He's on the phone a lot.
We couldn't wrangle.
Yeah.
We couldn't wrangle Walker Edmonston for this one either because of scheduling or because of budget. So we just went for it
And put him on the
like
phone.
we're just like, okay, everyone's going to be talking to and about Tom.
The one-sided telephone call, literally.
It also, but there isn't a clear spot for Tom to slot in. It's not like they're writing around him as much.
No.
As it's just like they're trying to establish Jack's role in the town. But he is not, but Tom is the one they need for the story.
Yeah.
So they're just kind of striking a middle ground where Jack exists in scenes and Tom is constantly referred to.
Well, and this is, again, another example of one of those episodes that only has an A plot. And, like, it is mainly, it's centered around the Barclays and in the Barclay house. So that's, like, where the episode starts. We get the teaser and we get the Barclay dinner. Man, did you listen to that segue? Whew, I'm on it. And Sir Jimothy Barclay is bored with hamburger, and we get this like kind of family dinner banter about them only eating hamburger. You know, it was the fifth night this week that they're eating, and Mary's like obviously pinching pennies to make this work, and because finances are so stressful. Honestly, this might be why I'm so stressed about money. Odyssey in combination with my parents. That might be it. But yeah, so we get that, and George has fallen asleep at the table, and Jimmy decides that he's gonna prank his dad and say that it's chicken, and so he wakes up and he's like, oh, it's great chicken, dear. And as a listener, I thought it was actually really funny because I did not see that coming at all.
It is funny. Mary scolds him. The scene then ends with George saying, you might want to check with the butcher, Mary. That hamburger or that chicken tasted a lot like hamburger. And I can't tell if that is George being like, I can't tell if George is making a joke or if the show is making a joke at George's expense. I was going back and forth both the times I listened to this.
He said it so seriously.
Is this George going, I know what they were doing to me, and so I'm playing along, haha, this is funny? Or is it the show going, look at George, he noticed something wasn't right, but he didn't figure out why?
Yeah, no, we need like an eye roll or something like that we can see so we can tell what he's doing.
It's weird that he's like...
He said it so plainly. He's like,
I know.
You need this, like, which would lead me to think that they're making the joke at his expense.
Yeah,
but you can't really.
No, but it was the thing I would say is that whoever was, well, I mean, we know who. McCusker wrote that.
Yeah.
And then didn't direct Chuck Bolte as to whether or not it was in, like, he was in on the joke or not. And so he just played it like ambiguous. And so it's just left ambiguous in my mind. Like, there is a way to play it both sides.
Yeah.
And the episode struck neither. And it's not that big a fault. But because we are making this show, I feel like I gotta point out the fact that it's weird.
No, it is weird, and it was really funny, and I definitely noticed it, and I'm glad you brought it up because I was confused by that too. But yeah, so we get the phone call. He gets drug away from the table, answers the phone. Yeah,
and it's just setting up George's like that he's being run thin.
Yep.
Because he wakes up and Mary's like, well, if you're so tired, like, go sleep. And he's like, I can't. I've got all this stuff to do.
Yep.
Which is the theme of this episode.
I've got all this stuff to do. And then he gets more stuff to do. And yeah, that's like that is what the intro to this episode. Basically, he's in seminary. They're super poor. Like that's the first scene of this episode.
Yeah, I
and
mean,
we get
they're
some
not,
really
like-
wonderful transition music here, which I really loved.
Yeah. Oh, so right. So the phone call that you mentioned,
Yeah.
is Tom calling.
Yep.
Aforementioned Tom, and asking George to run the Bible study at Emma's house because the pastor can't. We assume this is Emma Douglas
Yeah.
yet again.
Must be. She's one of the 4 people whose names we know.
Also,
Even though we know everybody's name as soon as we meet them.
It starts the problem of this episode for me, which is why, oh why, did they not choose to give the pastor a name?
I don't know. There's no... There,
Did that
with all
click
the-
on
we
you
have-
at all when you were listening to
No.
it? So it didn't the first time I listened through, and then
Okay.
the second time I was being driven insane
like, what
by
is
the
his
fact that they
name?
are talking about this
The
man
pastor.
who is in the hospital.
He had a heart
Jack,
attack.
Jack later asks, like,
The past.
how is the pastor doing?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so weird.
You gotta, just, call him, Pastor Reverend or something. Pull a real Forest Mountain on him. Which I think could be
Pastor
really...
reference is really funny.
Pastor Reverend's in the hospital. Rest in peace.
Yeah, it is. So it is the two things that on the second listen grated on me are them always calling him pastor
Yeah.
and them always referring to George's calling to the ministry.
Yeah, what is the ministry?
I don't know. Christians who
that
grew up
Christians
in
in-
other parts of the world, like other parts of the U.S., is this a thing? Write to us and let us know if you've ever heard it being referred to as the ministry.
I wasn't alive when this episode came out. If
right.
you were constant,
maybe this was a thing, and
maybe that's how they talked
it's
about
just-
it in the 80s.
it's just so it's just so funny that they are constantly referring to the ministry.
The
It
Ohio
sounds-
State University.
Right, it sounds like weirdly ominous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The pastor.
Or, I don't know.
The
like,
ministry
yeah. It just
versus.
it's just it was funny and I wanted to call attention to it.
Oh, I appreciate it.
And yeah, next time you listen to this episode, think about the fact that they just constantly say pastor and the ministry.
The ministry of the Lord.
The ministry of silly walks.
Jack. So basically, then the next scene is Jack and Jimmy and Donna at wit's end. And Jimmy and Donna are talking to Jack. And this is where I wrote down that Donna sounds so much older, and it's really cool. Like you were saying, they don't really distinguish the kids a ton this episode from each other, but it goes to serve the greater plot because the plot is them being unified as a family,
right,
and functioning and making sacrifices accordingly.
Yeah, the wiki lists this episode's theme as family togetherness.
Oh, really? Well, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. I don't know.
They do go above and beyond to differentiate Donna and Jimmy in this scene, though, because Donna orders chocolate ice cream, whereas Jimmy orders vanilla.
Yes. And
Jimmy
after
is
asking
right.
about hamburger ice cream, which was like a weird joke, like he was terrified hamburger was going to show up again.
Yeah, but it's once again where the line reading's not quite
Yeah, right?
Where he's like, I think the way that David Griffin's playing it is as though he is making a joke to his sister. Mm-hmm. I think the way it's written is that he is terrified at the prospect of hamburger ice cream.
Yeah.
And there's this weird juxtaposition where it doesn't quite
doesn't
come
do
out
either.
right. Where he's like, you don't have hamburger ice cream. He sounds like he's over it.
Yeah.
Which I don't
He's
think
already
is the
had
play.
hamburger ice cream.
Whereas Donna nails the Rocky Road joke.
Yeah.
Where
yeah,
Jack's like, we're having a special on Rocky Road, and Donna's like,
we're already
we're
on
a Rocky Road. And then Jimmy's like, do you guys have hamburger ice cream? And Jack's like, no.
And he's like, oh, thank goodness. And you're like, what? Okay.
and then just all of that is to set up Jack's wit moment of being like, I don't get it. So what's going on with you guys? And then they can have their thing.
Oh,
and
yeah, it's delightful.
I think the jokes almost work, which is the weird thing.
Maybe that's how kids talk, though, because I feel like with children, they connect 9 out of the 10 dots as far as humor is concerned. It's just the 10th that they really have a hard time with.
That explains why your humor doesn't always work on me, Andrew.
Yeah, that's because I'm a child. I really am. It's astonishing to me how little I have changed in certain respects, as far as my interests are concerned.
He's still doing an Adventures in Odyssey podcast in the year of our Lord 2021.
Yeah, when did we start this? 2018?
Yeah.
Wow. Another time. All right.
Another place.
Yeah, so this is basically when Jack then provides the advice of, oh, well, when I was super busy, my family kidnapped me and
yeah,
we did something fun, and they just forced me to relax because I got so caught up in it. And
I'm glad that worked for you, Jack.
Yeah, and wow, he is so the minute they said that, that stressed me out. I was like, wait, but what if he has something to do? He's got papers due. This is school.
I think it's also my assumption is that in Jack's circumstances, the reason it worked is that he was in a thing of stressing himself out over something that wasn't as big.
Yeah.
I get the feeling that Jack was worked up over little things or constantly preoccupied with something that didn't matter, whereas George is in a situation of being this stuff is almost life or death.
Well, no, yeah, that's how school is, where it's you just kind of don't get to decide anything, as far as what your schedule is or whatever. You just kind of have to work with what they give you, right, and work with what you can get. But
yeah, and it also Jack is slightly abdicated in that he doesn't make a point to offer this as advice for George.
No,
but he also does nothing to discourage it, and the fact that he is talking to children is setting up oh, obviously they're going to go for this.
Yeah, and the children are wow, this is such a great idea.
Right. He should know better, but also he's getting his start. He hasn't been wit very long yet.
No, yeah, he's got to figure it out.
Yeah, the other thing though that he does do really well in this scene is talking about all the stresses that he's got some sympathy for all the stresses that George is under.
Yeah.
And he makes a great point about George is starting from a disadvantage of being so much older and this being a second career for him. He's probably feeling he's got to compete with all these kids who are younger, or with all these students who are younger and more knowledgeable than him, has got to be an added stress. And I'm you make a great point, Jack.
Yeah.
Well done. That's good insight.
Yeah, no, he does make I think that he does a really good job of helping the kids imagine their dad a little bit more as a human. And I don't know. I think we've talked about it on the show before where the moment you imagine your parents as just people that are living their lives and trying to figure out
They are
to do.
Adults doing their best.
Yeah, they're adults doing their best. Unlike, they're not just some ethereal figure that always knows the right thing to do. Yeah, it really helps and benefits the relationship. And I think it does serve the purpose of bringing Donna and Jimmy together in this, which is then what we get in the next scene.
Right.
Which is them coming home and talking to Mary about it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
this continues with the unfortunate theme of this series, which is, boy, Mary's not written great.
She has a good moment later.
She does.
She has a really great moment later, but this is not a good Mary moment right here.
This is the problem with her, is every episode I have to be look, she is underwritten it is not great, but also there's this one moment that kind of rules.
Yeah.
So,
Well, it's
you
like,
know what? We just have to, understand that people can be complex. And
and then people are complex and characters are complex and,
writers aren't perfect.
Well, and like, we don't see as much of Mary as we could have because the show has never been about the parents. It's always been about the kids interacting with the parents,
Yeah.
Like very, very rarely is it about the parents. And then here it is, but it's more about, more focused on the family.
Right. It's never just about the parents.
Yeah.
It's always about the kids or the family.
Exactly. So we get...
It's Jimmy and Donna convince Mary to convince their mom to do this whole thing to get their dad some time off.
Yeah. They're going to surprise him. It's going to be great. And they're, like, trying to figure out how they're going to dupe him. And we get, there's going to be a sale on Greek textbooks at Holstein's Books to bait him, which is like, okay, great. And they tied it in, made a kind of a joke about him being in seminary. They talk about Greek a lot in this show.
Hey, it's Greek to him.
I guess, yeah. I wonder if Paul McCusker went to Bible college or really hated Greek. If you're listening, Paul, Mr. McCusker, tweet at me. Let me know if you hate Greek.
So she then goes to talk to George. He is not working on homework. In fact, he is paying bills.
Yeah, he's doing something so much more fun.
Yeah,
and they're basically, we get this great, and by great, I mean super stressful scene where he's looking at the money and being like, there's just not enough here. And then he's trying to figure out how to make it work. And to be honest with you, he does a very good job of just immediately being like, well, this is how we're going to cut spending and blah, 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 blah.
He does. He unfortunately, talks down to Mary in doing it in a way that is
like, hush, women,
bummer.
I have my money.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It's weird, the amount of just, because, I don't know. Mary doesn't come off great in this scene, even though, on paper, it kind of works. It's her. I think the problem is that, on its own, maybe this wouldn't be such a problem, but the fact that this, keeps being her thing is what makes it tough. But it's her talking about, oh, but we're already doing so much, and, I don't know what else I can do, but it comes off kind of, whiny.
Yeah, no.
It's so hard.
I was on her side. I was like, yeah, man, they're doing a lot. I don't know what you want me to say. I thought that George was the one that was sounded like he was really whiny and tired and just being he sounded like he was dysregulated. He wasn't coming at it. It's him,
right? It's him being overbearing and yeah.
It's not Cash Money, that's for sure.
It's not. I don't know. It's hard to put my finger on what doesn't quite work, but I don't love it.
It's okay, but she will shut him up later, and we'll talk about it, and we will cheer. Well, I will.
No, I will.
When it happened, bro, I was prepping.
Yeah,
I was like,
great.
Whoa.
Yeah. So in this scene, though, she throws out this harebrained scheme to get George to a haircut.
Yeah, a free haircut. We've been pinching pennies. I've been doing the best I can. I even got a friend.
She sells it.
Oh, she does.
She sells it so well that I think it might actually be evil.
No, it was a problem. I genuinely thought she had gotten them free haircuts, and then only a second later was I like, oh wait, that's the joke. That's the joke about the Holstein's books. Okay, they're kidnapping him. It's fine.
Right. It is. It is that thing where it's at what point are you is your deception cruel?
Yeah, it was cold.
And I feel like this might be the point.
Well, It's like the classic sitcom thing where it's like casual abuse of your spouse.
The point at which it crosses over for me is when she mentions an older lady in the congregation who has been talking trash about George's hair. And I'm like, all right, you didn't have to go for the jugular, ma'am.
Oh my gosh, I completely forgot that she said that. And that was in context. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Wow. She's like really manipulating her husband right now. And I mean, you know, George, if you actually took care of yourself and you weren't so tired all the time, maybe you would be able to recognize it, you know?
Hey, Andrew. Listen to your own advice, sir.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean,
You're doing well now, but this fall, boy, this fall was so much.
Yeah. I'll be better in the spring, I promise.
All right, you better. Otherwise, I'll sign you up for a haircut.
Oh. Wait, so are you going to kidnap me?
Yes. That's what that means, Andrew. That is now the slang we use to talk about kidnapping.
Taking you around back and giving you a haircut.
Right.
Pass the Henny. I don't know.
Yeah. I'm going to throw you into an escape room and suck out all the air.
And just traumatize you, but not actually kill you.
Right, and it'll all be for the greater good.
Yep.
So, George doesn't want to do this. He's like, I've got to study, I've got responsibilities with the church.
Which is very reasonable.
Mary then, like, quadruples down and just, like, drags him, and he's like, all right, I'm going to take my books and do it on the ride. And she's like, oh, George, you don't need to take your books.
And
so
then
he
she
doesn't.
demands on driving.
Right,
and George
and
is like, why would you drive? And she's
You're
like,
so pregnant, you could barely reach the steering wheel.
Okay, pregnant ladies can drive just fine. Just
also,
saying.
I'm glad that the show acknowledges where Mary's like, yo, not cool. And he's like, yeah, okay, that was bad.
Yeah, okay.
Like, I'm really happy that interaction ends that way because, whew.
Yeah. George really... Boy, you wanna make life rough for yourself, make fun of your pregnant wife.
Right.
It never ends well.
We didn't talk about it, but when Jimmy is trying to get Mary to disclose what is in the casserole, I was like, oh no, this had better not be another craving joke. And then it wasn't.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. I just remembered... This specific episode, I credit to, like, why I think of hamburger when I think of poor people.
Oh my word. That's weird, because, I've never thought about that.
I don't know. It's just, like, one of those things that I guess...
You know what I always think of? Margarine, because of Matilda. She goes to the teacher's house and is like, wow, the teacher's so poor she can't even afford butter. She's got to use margarine. And I was like, okay, apparently that's what poor is. It's having a house all for yourself, but having margarine.
Yep. Real estate in France was dirt cheap in like the 1918.
Is that book set in France?
Yeah. Matilda?
Wow.
I thought so.
I mean, I believe you.
Or maybe I'm thinking... I think I might be wrong.
Okay. I mean, Madeline was set in France.
That's what I was thinking of. Madeline. Oh my gosh. What a... We're just not talking about Odyssey anymore.
So they're in the car, and then they finally reveal that, like, oh yeah, we are kidnapping you for a picnic, and George is so stressed, and I am so stressed for him.
Yep.
This scene is brutal.
And Chuck Nolte's voice acting is incredible.
I am amazed by how real and visceral the second half of this episode is allowed to be. Yeah. I understand why this traumatized you a bit as a child. Like, I kind of can't believe that this was put on, like, that Focus on the Family put this episode out with as, like, heavy as it gets, and just like
it was stressful in not like a action and explosions way, but in like a your worst nightmare where like everything is falling apart and like you went from being happy to being too poor to like eat and having to move and leaving everybody.
And the thing that stressed, like, so the being like, oh man, I would hate to be George right now stressed me out. Mm-hmm. But the thing that was just kind of like shockingly real was like the disunity in the family and George like questioning everything.
Yeah.
And it's really well written. But like, wow, I was not expecting how heavy it was going to get.
No, it got so heavy.
And so, this is where like they're in the
like-
park and George just like can't have fun. And Jimmy's like, you want to come play ball with me? He's like, I can't. You know,
Go
I don't
play by
want
yourself
to
or
do it by
whatever.
yourself. And Jimmy's like, well, we should have brought Normal. And then George just goes off
on the dog. Yeah.
and it's so tough.
Yeah, and then literally
like,
Jimmy
I
responds
get it.
by going, maybe I should play catch with myself. And
Yeah.
that's like, that
The
is...
levity that we needed. Like, it's a good joke.
No, that's like what I would do as a kid, though, where it was just like, something's happening here. The adults are talking, I leave now.
Right,
Like,
yeah.
I will go play catch by myself.
But George is like, man, we should get rid of the dog. We're spending so much on dog food. We have no money. We're going to have to get rid of the house. Like, I am spiraling.
Yeah, no, it's true. And that's the thing where it's like, the interesting thing about this episode is that it is all one plot, but there's two sides of it because there's two lessons to be learned, right? George learns how to take care of himself and share responsibility with other people. He learns how to say no and set boundaries.
Yep.
And the family learns how to support somebody during a really tough time.
Yeah.
Is not by forcing them to be happy, but just supporting them and loving them and recognizing that them being a healthy person is what's going to make them happy.
You just hit on the thing that is like, that didn't click for me until now, but is huge, is like, I don't know if I can think of another episode where we had two opposing sides and the solution was in the middle.
Yep. And
A
both sides
situation where
learned
both
something.
sides were wrong.
Yep.
And both learned from it.
Yeah.
And it, as we'll discuss as we get to the end of it, it almost wasn't. Like, it didn't.
Well, it didn't drive home. Like, this is where...
Like, I think it gets there. But I
Yeah.
think it does it. I mean, it does it at
doesn't-
literally the last possible second of the episode.
Yeah.
So, it's the part of this scene that I think is just amazing in how it's being played is Jimmy and Donna starting to get like snippy and being smartasses in a way that like I really like, that feels real.
Yeah.
And just this back and forth that they have with their dad where they're just kind of like, yeah, they're sarcastic and they're over it and they're disrespectful, and George calls them on it and they're like apologetic. Like, they know that thing where like, you know, you're out of line, but you just like feel like you got to get the dig in.
Well, and Mary calls George in the scene, right? Like, doesn't she call him on how he's reacting? Like, because George kind of has a temper tantrum here, and then Mary responds by being like, I think we're all just tired and we need some time.
Yep. Well, no, what happens is, right, George has his like temper tantrum, says like, I guess none of my family supports me.
Yeah.
What about you, Mary? And she gives the non-answer of, I think we're, like, emotions are running high and we all just need some time.
To which I saw as an absolute win, because in my family, if you continue that discussion, it no longer is productive. Like, if you try to have that discussion while everybody's emotions are so high.
I don't think that's just your family, buddy.
No, yeah.
I think that's how...
Just how life works.
Yeah, I think that's true of non-family relationships quite a bit as well.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I'm such a firm believer in sleeping and being rested and hydrated. But yeah, no. And I like what I was saying earlier about this not being a terrible Mary episode where, so she started out being bad. This is like the middle ground, and then we get the fruition later.
Yeah.
But is there anything else you want to talk about this scene?
The only thing other thing I want to hit on in this scene is that there is thunder in the distance, and you keep thinking like, oh, this is where like this
The
is going to
rain's
be
gonna
right.
happen, yeah.
Literally, it's going to literally be rain on the thing, and then it doesn't, and it's weird, and then the rain happens later in the episode.
What a strange note.
It is. It's just bizarre in just the staging where I'm like, was there a part that was cut of like the rain starting in that scene that they were then like, because the rain then continues the rest of the episode and they're like seem to be setting it up with thunder, but maybe they weren't. Maybe it's just there as a red herring and they're trying to stress me out even more because I'm like,
this episode.
oh man, then it's going to dump rain and then George is going to be fully justified in this and is going to be able to be even more pissy and like it's going to be such a like, but no rain yet.
Yep.
So they then, we're back at the house.
Yep.
And George is off the phone, like comes back in, the phone's ringing, it's Tom.
Yep.
He's like, yeah, I was sorry you couldn't get a hold of me. I was out with my family. Mm-hmm. The pastor has had a heart attack. He needs bypass surgery. Yeah. Pastor Reverend's had a heart attack. He needs bypass surgery.
Yeah.
So George is going to go to the hospital.
Yep. He's going to go to the hospital to support, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, makes sense. Makes sense because, that's a really scary, hard thing.
Yeah, and it's your coworker, and you're also kind of next in command. So, yeah. It just, it makes sense.
But he gets pulled away.
And
go for it.
Oh, no.
I was just saying, in this moment, it was very much. It felt to me like, who was it? Was it Jack that talked to them before, or was it Whit that was talking to him before about like sharing their dad with other people and how hard that was going to be? And he's talking about sharing.
Yep. Yeah. And he says like you're going to have to like be sharing your father. Like he's going to become a father to a lot of other people.
Yeah.
And like
it's
going to be a new dynamic.
I mean, not a fun moment, but like that's where I was like, oh, this is really cool that this is where we're getting to see this arc develop, where they are actually losing him now. Like, he was with them, and then he got a phone call, and he was gone. And this episode, I guess, is kind of dealing with that, and in the more meta sense. But then we get, it cuts to George coming back to Wit's End, right?
Yeah. So George will go to Wit's End, but there is that moment where Mary grabs the kids and they go into the family room to pray.
Yeah. Yes, because he says that me and my family will be praying, and then he leaves, and Jimmy and Donna are like, oh, yeah, well, now what do we do? And Mary's like, well, your father said we were gonna pray, so like that's what we're gonna do. Yeah. And it's a good moment, like it's less, in my mind, I see it less as him doing what George said and more so just doing the right thing in that moment.
Yeah. And so, then the next scene is George showing up at Wit's End to ask Jack if he can cover his Sunday school class because he's got to pick up more responsibilities because Pastor Reverend is in the hospital.
Yeah. Which was a great idea. Tom suggested it to him. And this is the beginning of the George figuring out what he actually needs to do to not be so miserable.
I mean, he doesn't figure it out though. Like,
no,
his
not
solution is like, oh, I have to abandon ship. But I love,
his solution is, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm not sure if I know that I want to do this anymore. Like, it's costing me so much. Things are not working, and Jack responds so well.
I love this conversation.
Down to him.
Yep.
He just speaks his own experience and say
and
what you have to say. Cause
and it's George finally opening up, admitting like that while he didn't enjoy the picnic, it highlighted the fact that like he has been distant from his family, and it's really like getting to him, and he feels like he's kind of losing his family for like this thing that he thought he was called to do. But if I'm like called to do this and I'm losing my family as a result, like, was it really my calling? And like wrestling with that and saying like, he's got all these doubts. He's been in this constant cycle of studying, working at the church, sleeping. Like that's all his time's been up. His family, he feels like he's like losing as a result. And he has this amazing moment of like, I can't believe the show let him go there, of just saying like maybe I made a mistake in all this. Maybe God made a mistake. And that is not addressed.
No.
Like, they just let him
Yeah.
throw that out there.
Let him word vomit that maybe God made a mistake. And I immediately thought that Jack was going to be like, well, God can't make a mistake.
Right. But, and I think, like, nowadays that would absolutely happen.
Yeah.
Like, modern day wit would not let that just hang there.
Yeah.
But I love it because, so there's this thing if you're a person who's in my life, you've heard me talk about all the time, which is the idea of, like, in, like, Christian faith and community, being open and honest with each other and not just saying the thing that you know is the correct thing to say.
Yeah, exactly.
And, like, the church is really bad at that as a whole.
Oh, yeah.
And I would say, like, as an extension, I would fully expect this to not do it well. But they let George say what he is truly feeling, and it's not responded with a correction, a scolding, a well, actually, in the way that, like that is what keeps people from saying that sort of thing, from being real in any sort of community group, is, like, the knowledge that, like, people are going to be like,
if I'm vulnerable with you, they will recognize, like,
they're going to correct me and tell me that I'm doing this wrong. And I know that what I'm saying is wrong, but it's also how I'm feeling, and I need to be real with that.
Yeah.
And it was amazing in this scene to have George be allowed to do that. To have him say, maybe God made a mistake, knowing in his heart that that is not true. And the show doesn't correct him. They let him be like, this is honestly how he is feeling. We are going to let him vocalize that.
I felt that way so many times in my life, where it's like I felt like I knew what God wanted for me to do in the moment. And then I was like, well, either I made a mistake misinterpreting it. Like, I never thought that, well, like, I don't know, for me personally, I've never really been like, oh, God makes mistakes and stuff like that. Like, I've always just been like, clearly, I just messed this up. Clearly, I'm a big silly idiot, and I misinterpreted the signs, and, like, maybe it was a good idea, but not the right timing, or for whatever reason. And listening through this the first time, you kind of tripped the thing of, like, what's the will of God in this situation? And that's where I was perceiving that, like, the hammer was gonna come down, and it was gonna be like, no, God can't be wrong.
Right, because
but he gave him a human. He can be
a
human.
It's not about whether or not God can be wrong. It's about, or whether or not George believes that. It's just about him being, like,
upset,
open and honest, and, like, not being chastised for having a thought that goes against Christian doctrine or whatever. Like, that dichotomy is so good in being like, we don't need to point out that this man just, like, said something that the majority of people would say is heretical.
No,
like,
it was so
it doesn't
well
matter because it's what he is feeling. And I just, there's this disconnect for me so often between, like, what you are honestly feeling and what you are able to say out loud because you know the repercussions. And so just,
Jack doesn't correct it. Because in that moment, when you make that correction, you're assuming a sort of moral responsibility to right other people's wrongs, right? And that is where the judgment would come into place and people feel uncomfortable. And Jack doesn't. Like, that's a very classic, just, like, being distant enough to hear something that's happening and internalize it and speak into it in a way that isn't giving direct commands or expectations, but just providing context so that they can better understand a solution or the solution.
Right. And
know?
It's about knowing you have a relationship with the person.
Yeah.
And if this is a thing that they believe that is coming up over a period of time, having a conversation with them, but not in the moment while they're heated, being like, no, what you just said is wrong.
Yeah.
And, like, you need to I need to correct you on that, which is, like, a stumbling, it's just this thing that I constantly see happen and drives me up a wall. And so, like, I love.
It's very, very
I love
upsetting
that
when I see that. So
that
this
George
is
can be
doesn't
wrong.
he leave this scene planning on giving up?
A little bit,
Kind of,
He's
because he
just-
comes home.
Yeah,
and
he will. Right, he doesn't. It doesn't vocalize it in the scene.
Yeah.
Jack is just like, here's some, like, says his bit, and George is like, I can tell, like, what you're saying is good counsel, but I am too exhausted to hear it.
Yeah.
And he leaves. And he walks home in a thunderstorm because there's the rain.
Of course.
And sits down, and the family's gathered up. They're like, we've got something to talk about. And George is like, no, I must go first.
Yeah. It's like, I've had something to say too. And then Mary is like, nope, we're talking.
Well, no, but George
that's
does
later.
say his thing.
Oh, that's right. He
George
says
first is like, I am, like, I can't do this anymore.
yeah.
Like, I think I'm going to lose you if I keep doing this. I am going to, like, I am done with this. I don't know what wires got crossed that I thought that this was what God had for me, but it can't be because it is too much.
Yeah.
And then the family all takes their turns, like, kind of chastising him, and it's Mary saying, like, oh, well, like, I didn't expect that at all, and Jimmy saying, like, I didn't know my dad was a wimp. And then Donna being like, well, look, we've got something to tell you. And George is like, oh, look, I don't, or I think Donna says, like, oh, well, that's like the opposite of what we came to.
Yeah.
And George is
Yeah.
like, what do you mean? And Donna's like, and Mary's then like,
We came to the opposite conclusion.
yeah. And she starts to talk, and George is kind of jumps in, and she's like, no, you will listen.
Yeah, no.
And it's
no.
like, great.
Yeah, it's a really awesome moment because he gets super excited and wants to kind of go back to the way that it was at the beginning, where he was at the head of it and he was doing all this all on his own. And
he's still stressing out about it.
And
Like,
he's still stressing out about it.
As she lays out all of the things, all the reasons and the things that he needs to continue doing, he's like, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. And she's like, no, you listen.
It will work.
It will work. And actually, like, we have reasons why it will work. One, like, we're just going to rally around you. We need to be more supportive of you. That means, like, when you have a moment, like, savoring it and, like, like, using time to relax, but not forcing it on you.
Yeah.
And
Listening to your needs.
yeah.
Supporting you when what you need is help to get through what you're going through, and, like, providing time for you to take care of yourself by just loving you well, giving you the ability to take care of yourself.
And then, and then he's like,
Yeah. So the theme that we and this is partially my bad that we skipped over with the Jack scene was, whenever we're tested, God's always with us, right?
Right.
There, the idea that there is no challenge. They're facing this challenge. There's no challenge that God can bring into your life that he doesn't equip you to overcome. And so, like,
that doesn't mean it's easy.
no, it doesn't mean it's easy, but it just means that, like, there is, the only way out is through.
Yeah.
And,
well put. Yeah. And it's this
really
I think the best thing Mary says during this is when she is just like, no one made a mistake in this. I was with you while you were, like, wrestling through this. We thought through this stuff together. You didn't make the wrong call.
Yeah.
Like, what we discerned was God's will was not wrong.
Yeah.
It's going to be tough, but, like, we're on the right path. And I
Yeah.
just love that reassurance from her. It's so good. It's so strong. And then, like, she gets to pull the whammy of just, like, we went to the hospital. We talked to Tom. Here's what's going to happen. Like,
You get a raise.
you're salaried now. You're going to be, like, interim pastor while the pastor is in the hospital and just recuperating. Also, because Tom's head deacon, so he can make that call.
Yeah.
Sure.
Of course.
Also, Tom is on the board of the board of directors for the seminary, which he in no way seems qualified for.
No, not at all.
They just needed to write that in. They could have.
They
just
had
said,
to address the school stuff.
Why not just say, Tom knows the board of directors at the seminary?
Yeah,
Tom is influential in this community, but I'm like,
Tom, talk to an academic advisor, because literally the outcome of this is just saying that he has time to study or like some learning.
Right, like they're gonna work with him. It'll be some sort of work study thing with the fact that he is going to like the church. He's also like, George isn't seemingly on any sort of timeline that he has to get his classes done by, so he can definitely scale things back.
Yeah.
And then he's like, this isn't gonna make all this like easy, and they're like, yeah, but like we're here for you. We'll get through it.
Yeah, we're gonna do it together.
And then they go for anything else you wanted to say?
No, they go for Sundays at Wits End.
Sundays.
It's so
but
nice.
As they leave, the phone starts ringing.
Yeah.
And they walk out, and George is like, it'll just ring.
Yeah.
And then it keeps ringing. Mm-hmm. And George comes back in and picks it up. Yeah. And like, he's like, okay, like somebody's basically like, we need something.
Yeah.
And George is like, okay, I can come out tonight. And then he's like, actually, can it wait till tomorrow afternoon? And it is.
Yeah, I was spending some time with my family.
Right. It's the moment the episode needs to show that, like, oh, things are different on George's end as well.
Yep.
He was at fault during this episode. Like, he has not come out with a clean slate. It's not just, oh, all the family needs to be better for him. It's also like he needs to like prioritize his family. He can't always just be taking everything that comes at him at full blast. Like, he needs to learn how to manage margin.
Yeah.
And
set boundaries for his life and jobs and stuff. Because, like, I get it. Being in, like, going into the service industry and stuff like that, when you want people to ask you for stuff and then people ask you for stuff, it's really, really, really hard to say no.
Right.
And not everybody's like that, but for me, I have such a hard time with it.
Yeah.
And it's a really good moment to show, like, you're right. This is what he needed to...
Especially, when you feel like you are
the can do it.
only person or even just the best person to do something,
exactly.
It's hard to turn it down.
Yeah. When you feel like somebody is asking you to do something because either A, it's your responsibility, or B, you're the most you're the most well-equipped, like, it's so hard to say no. But they do a really good job. And that's what the episode goes on. And it goes out with him saying, well, all right, Lord, it's only by your strength.
Yeah. So the thing I want to point out, though, courtesy of the official guide, about that final moment, it was not in the script. The episode was supposed to end with him going in, answering the phone, and being separated from his family.
Really?
That was how the episode was written to end. Chuck Bolte, voice of George, and E.T. on the show, came in and was like, look, I've got a different take. And they went with it, and it is the ending the episode needs.
Yeah, why would he leave? That would be so much worse.
It was literally like, the official guide writes like, this was a suggestion in the studio. Like, they had recorded the other version, and Chuck Bolte was like, look, can we try this?
Yeah.
And I understand that the point they were trying to make in the original version is like,
he was equipped, now he can go out.
Well, he was equipped, he can go out, but also, like, just because they did this doesn't mean things get to be easy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But Bolte's move here is brilliant for all the reasons we just said.
Yeah, it's actually the good dad move.
And I think that it should be, like, stated.
That's so crazy, though.
That he needs to be able to say no to a request sometimes.
Yeah.
And this isn't even a flat out no. This is just like,
tomorrow.
Can it wait till tomorrow? And the person's like, yeah, sure. And he's like, great.
Mm-hmm.
like it's such an important moment here. I think it is the perfect ending for all the reasons we've said, and it is amazing that it was not part of the plan.
Yeah, that is crazy, but I'm happy.
Yeah.
I'm really happy with the episode that we got, and yeah, good on them. This episode is really involved in like family dynamic stuff. Now that makes a lot of sense because obviously I'm a family person and you are as well, so it would make a lot of sense that this episode that would feel like a worst nightmare.
Right. Well, yeah, and I also just like the thing of being like I'm not a huge fan of like surprises or like that lack of control.
Yep.
And so I'm just like, that would be so stressful to be like, I have a million things on my agenda and I'm being
the world is
forced
falling,
into this. And like, I want to be a good sport because it's good intentions and it's my family, but I am so stressed out that I start lashing out and now like everything sucks. They're teaming up on me. Like we all hate each other. Like that is
the
terrifying.
Nightmare. Yeah. that is a nightmare.
But
do you have anything else you want to say about this episode, Dylan?
I don't think so.
No, I think we talked about it a lot, and
I think it's
so good.
Yeah, I think the second half of this episode is so good. I think the episode is it's weirdly balanced in that like I think some things are incredibly well written and other things I was just like, eh.
Well, it feels like it's kind of it didn't. Yeah, it was written more like real life and less like a TV show, if that makes sense. And there are moments where it slips into feeling like a TV show or an audio drama, and then we get the stuff where it just feels like life. And maybe that's just the balance that Odyssey strives to find. But there were definitely moments in this episode where, jokes didn't hit, and we talked about that. So overall
good feelings. Appreciated it. Yeah. Anything you'd like to plug this week, Andrew?
Sleeping, taking care of yourself.
Hey.
You know what? Yeah, that's fine.
Sleep and self-care. I'm going to second Andrew's plug.
There we go. Get your rest, Chalk Squad. The semester starts soon if you're in college.
Yeah.
And if you're not, sorry you're back at work after the holidays, but it's a new year, new opportunities, and I'm glad to still be making this show with you guys.
Yeah, me too.
And it's so much fun.
And we will be back in a week to talk about episode 289, A Call for Reverend Jimmy.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
WadFam Chalk Pod is a presentation of the Lidditz Podcast Co-op. This show is a fan podcast and has no official affiliation with Adventures in Odyssey or Focus on the Family. As such, the copyright is ours under Creative Commons. Follow the podcast at WadFamChalkPod on Twitter and Instagram, or email us at wadfamchalkpod@gmail.com. George Under Pressure was hosted by Dylan Weaver and Andrew Acebo and edited by Dylan Weaver. And I'm Nathan Haverstick, hoping you'll join us again next time for more of the Wad Fam Chalk Pod.